Contract to coach the Toronto Maple Leafs. I guess, first off, from my perspective, I'd like to thank Mike for 10 fabulous years. Hired Mike in 2005, and we made the playoffs for 10 consecutive years. I went to the Final Four 3 straight years in 07, 08, 09, and won a cup in 08. And at the same time, the last few years, I thought he did a fabulous job in putting some younger players in our organization onto our team and developing them into players that we think are going to help us going forward. So, I've got mixed emotions today. Mike and I were in Prague together for 5, from I got there last Sunday, he got there Tuesday, and then we flew home on Sunday, spent 8 hours sitting beside each other in the plane. And then, I talked to, he was at my office yesterday for about an hour, and then he came over to my house this morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, texted me, and we spent some time this morning. So I've got mixed emotions because he's one of the greatest coaches in the league, if not the greatest coach. But at the same time, as we went through the process, I think Mike understood that when you'd coached in the same city for 10 years, my offers last June were a 4-year term. Again in January was a 4-year term. We went to when we started the process, he wanted to kind of go out and talk to teams that had interest. And then as we sat yesterday morning, I said, Mike, the best I can do is 5 years. When you've been in the same city as long as I have and as long as Mike has, you don't get much longer term than 4 and 5 years. So I think that certainly part of the decision-making process probably for Mike was the amount of term that he could get in Toronto versus what we were prepared to give.
Do you feel like you were left at the altar?
I don't. I think that I certainly knew when we. I'm going to go back 2 weeks ago. Mike and I drove to Grand Rapids and spent time together, and he said, "Ken, I'd like an opportunity to explore the market." And I said, "Give me a few days." I talked to our owners, talked to Jimmy Devellano, talked to a couple other people, and eventually decided to grant him permission. Certainly, when you got a guy like Mike Babcock who's accomplished what he's accomplished, and one of the faces probably of our hockey club, I certainly knew that it was going to be something that was watched very, very closely. I don't think anything. I wanted Mike back if Mike, at the end of the day, wanted to be here. If he felt at the end of the process, this was the best fit for him. And I also would say to you, I know that I think it was I know it was a difficult decision for him. I think he's got roots here. He's been here for 10 years. His family has roots. You get close to the players. We spent 5 days with watching the World Championships and watching Dylan Larkin, and he's more of the future, and that's sort of the direction that we're going. So I know it was a difficult decision, but at the end of the day, he made a decision that he felt was best for him. Now, I've got some decisions to make, and our goal is to beat Mike.
Is Jeff Blashill your new next head coach?
Can you speak a little closer to the mic?
Okay, sorry, yeah.
Thank you.
What I'm going to do, I talked to Blash today. I told Blash that I'm waiting to see their playoff schedule because they're going into the third round. Tonight's Game 7, Oak City versus Utica, and then once I know the schedule, I'm going to go down and spend some time a day with them. So he's certainly a leading candidate. I haven't made a final decision. I need to spend some time with him before I know anything. So hopefully next week I get over to spend some time with Blash.
Is Dan Bilesma in the mix?
He's certainly a name. I haven't really had a chance to put some names together, but I've got my list is going to be short. It's going to be 2 or 3 names, but that's certainly a good name.
When did you know that you were out of the running for Mike?
Pardon me?
When did you know that you were out of the running for Mike?
At 11:15 today.
So you had negotiated all the way up to 11:15?
I don't know if talked. Negotiation to me means you stand there and you keep exchanging numbers back and forth. And I think that certainly exchanging numbers they're always a part of the decisions that any of us make in sports. But it was also there was a lot of other things. So, again, when he texted me this morning at 8 o'clock. He came to my house. We spent about a half an hour together, 40 minutes, before I headed down to the office. We had one more good talk, and I told him I had a couple of players that I had to interview, and I was going to call him when that was done, and I called him at 11:15, and he told me, he said, Ken, I've made a decision, and I'm going to Toronto.
Kenny, how
He said
surprised
from
are
the
you with the
get-go.
numbers?
Pardon me?
How surprised are you with the numbers?
I've been in this sport a long time,
Yeah, I
and one of the things that I said to Mike, I think I've said it to all you, anytime you're an unrestricted free agent in the prime of your career, there's going to be opportunities that probably will stagger you, and given. And I use the word stagger because certainly when you look at the sort of, I'm aware of what the industry pays. But in order sometimes to get people, you've got to go, above and beyond the industry standards in order to try to get somebody to come to you. So I'm happy for Mike. Again, Mike gave Red Wing fans and our organization 10 fabulous years. I love working with Mike, so I'm happy for him.
He said from the get-go that it was about winning and it was about family, and you look at
Yeah.
Toronto, and I don't know if they're going to win anytime soon. Are you a little shocked, and do you think you guys were ever the front runner?
You have to ask Mike that. I would say to you that it was. I just know it was a difficult decision because I was sort of, I was involved at the front end, and then we went to Prague, and then we were both in Prague. He met with some people there. Brendan Shanahan came over there on Friday or something. I know he spent some time with Shanny over in Prague. Who was the front runner? How do you handicap the race? That's one for Mike. I just think that, again, that he'd been here for 10 years. He had, when you've been somewhere for a long time, you got roots. We've worked hard to try to build a program, and we actually talked about that the last couple of days. A program of player development, drafting, and they come up here, and Mike makes them accountable, and there's some young players. We're trying to transition here to some younger people. We're trying to stay competitive. We're trying to compete to make the playoffs. We're trying to compete to go on a playoff run. And I think when you put your heart and soul, we've worked together hand in hand, that these aren't easy decisions. If they were easy decisions, you probably had the wrong people in the first place. So, when I hired Mike Babcock, he had passion. He had a work ethic. He became a Red Wing. Ultimately, I think that he went into this process and he made the decision that he made today. I believe it was a difficult decision for him, not only to choose to go to Toronto, but also to choose to leave Detroit. But I know that he had some, a couple other teams that he talked to that were impressive as well. So I don't know how to handicap it, but I do know that it was a difficult decision.
You talked about familiarity. How does that familiarity help Blashill?
Well, I got to meet with Blash. I know you guys would like me to announce that he's the next coach, but I think there's a process we got to go. I got to meet with Blash, and up until 11:15 today, when I got the call from Mike, I haven't really reached out to anybody. I wanted to. I was still. There's a chance that Mike could come back. I mean, we talked yesterday. Even at 8 o'clock this morning, I know that he was down to the short strokes of making a decision, but he hadn't quite make it. And again, between 8 o'clock, 8:15, and 11:15 today, he said, I kind of made my decision. So, I got to go spend some time with Blash now. Again, I want the focus of Jeff Blashill and the Grand Rapids Griffins to be on, winning the next series and having those young players in our system continue to experience playoff hockey. So I don't want, at some point in time, I'll get into Grand Rapids on an off day, spend some time with Blash, and then from there, is there another name or two? Let me see how the first the first meeting goes with Jeff Blashill. Certainly with Blash. We've worked together, so it's. but it's been, he was here for a year as an assistant coach. He worked more for Mike. I go in the room. I talk to the head coach every day. Brian Martin's the general manager. He talks to Blash. So I want to spend some time with Blash, and then I'll decide what's the next step after I've met with Jeff Blashill.
What
Have
was
you
that?
spoken to any of the players since
Pardon
you
me?
heard? Have you spoken to any of the players since you heard from Mike?
Actually, I had my meeting today with Henrik Zetterberg. So I told Z came in at 10:30, and I told him I needed to talk to Babs at 11:15. So Henrik was one of the first people to find out that of Mike's decision. I did call Pavel Datsuk. Kroner's in the air, flying from. He was on a vacation, so I've had Chris Draper text him so that when he lands, he knows. I'm sure in the world that he lives in a little different world than I am. I'm 60ish, he's 30ish, so I'm sure he's been a little more up in tune. But certainly, I wanted the leadership, the captains and assistant captains, to hear from me of what my decision is.
What did Hank say?
Not much. He just said he's been watching it from afar, and I think that I'd like to think that the Detroit, we're trying to build something. Hank's the captain. Mike's made a decision. We now got to go to work, and Mike's in our division. He's 4 hours down the road, and we're going to play him 4 times, and they're trying to make the playoffs, and we're trying to make the playoffs. So I'm sure Hank is like I am. He's thankful for 10 fabulous years, but he's now somebody that we got to try to be. He didn't say much. I had so many people, so much going on there. I quickly called Hank. I said, I want you to hear it from me, because he had left the rink and he was gone somewhere, and Draper came in and things were going, and my phone was texting and things were going on. So I just wanted to reach out to Hank as he was driving, just to say, Hank, just so you hear it from me first. So we didn't get into much of a very long conversation.
Ken, that 8 a.m. meeting, a lot of fans would say they wish they could be a fly on the wall for that. I know you said you don't want to push a guy to be here if he doesn't want to be here,
Yeah.
but was it one final sales pitch? What was that hour like?
He'd gone through his process. I think he was close to making a decision. He just wanted to take. He wanted to have one. We had one last conversation. I think that's about it. I mean, at the end of the day, he needed one last conversation, and I talked about today that I felt that from a term standpoint, we sort of were at our limit in term, and beyond. If we weren't prepared to go any more term, then it was harder to go. And it doesn't even mean that if we went more term that he was going to be back. He spent a lot of time here over the last however long it was, 2 weeks. Kind of getting himself to that point in time. And I think that I also think that as he's going through the process, that there's emotions involved, because you've worked together for so long. So I think that you've also got to go through that process of, one meeting leads to another meeting, to understanding that emotion is going to, you're slowly making a decision to head in another direction. So I think today when I met him at 8 o'clock, I think he was well on his way to making a decision, but he wasn't 100% there. And between our meeting there and 11:15, he made a decision that he did.
Ken, the way this played out in public, there were times that it was almost like a circus-type atmosphere, the way he played it out in public. Were you comfortable the entire time, the way he played this out? I mean, thinking back about the interview on Friday, it looked like at times you may have been a little uncomfortable.
Is that the Drager interview?
Yeah.
Somebody told me I looked uncomfortable. I kind of had my hands stuck there, and I wasn't sure if I should move my hands or not move my hands, because I kind of got started there. So if I looked uncomfortable, I wasn't uncomfortable. I guess my comfort level has been that we got 10 great years. It's a decade. That's a long time in pro sports. I've built up a friendship with a man that we talked about today that we want to go on for the rest of our lives. My daughter's getting married in July. He's coming. Him and Maureen are coming to the wedding. So it's been 10 fabulous years. Wish we'd have won a couple more series. We feel disappointed we weren't able to finish off the Tampa Bay series when you're up 3-2, and we talked about the Chicago series 2 years ago. But lots has gone on that you're there every day. We're trying to develop some young people. So it's emotional. It's 10 years. It's been 10 from our perspective. Again, we wish we'd have won more playoff series. We certainly in the Boston series, I think a year ago we weren't ready to go anywhere in that Boston series given the injuries and given the team that we played. But we wish we'd have. We had a few Game 7s. You think about Game 7 against Pittsburgh, and you think Game 7 in San Jose when we were down 3-0, and you think being up 3-1 against Chicago, we couldn't win the series. We talked about Tampa being up 3-2, and we couldn't win the series. But that's you win some of those series, and all of a sudden the record looks better. But we're the only team to make the playoffs 10 straight years in a row. We've worked hand in hand. I think I'd like to. He said to me, today, I've challenged him to make him better, and vice versa. But at the end of the day, all good things come to an end, and he's on to a new chapter of his life, his professional career. And now, same thing. I've got to make some decisions here about who the next coach of the Detroit Red Wings is. And our goal is to try to make the playoffs, and our goal is to try to win some playoff series. But with regards to Mike, it's been 10 fabulous years professionally and personally. And he made the decision based upon all the information, the process he went. And from a circus standpoint, I'm fortunate I'm not on Twitter. I don't tweet. I don't Twitter.
You're missing a lot.
I do that for a reason. I don't read newspapers. Certainly when we're sitting there at breakfast on Thursday morning in Prague and Mike says to me, Darren Dreger would like to fly over and interview something, and you're flying over from Toronto. We're in Prague. Boy, that you start to get it's a bit. They're gonna fly over from Toronto to sit with us, and we sat in and we did for a 7 or 8 minute interview. You certainly understand the scope of how big it is, but I don't go on all those social medias for a reason. It's just so that I want to stay focused on what I got to do. I got Chris Draper that is on social media. I've got Ryan Martin that's on social media. I've got people in my organization that keep me posted as I need to know what's going on out there. So from a circus standpoint, certainly I know, certainly the last 2 days, when Mike said on that interview that I think Darren Dreger asked him if he'd be ready to make his decision on May the 25th, and he said, I'll be ready to make it on May 20th. Certainly when we landed back here on Monday afternoon and I got in the office on Tuesday morning, and I'm losing, I think it's today, days have gone fast. Yesterday, and all of a sudden, my phone's going crazy, and there's media, and you start to, and people are sensing a decision. I started to, grasp that circus atmosphere that you were talking about. But up until, the last 3-4 days, my attitude was I had an employee, a friend, a coach that had helped give us 10 great years. He wanted an opportunity to explore the market before he made a decision, and there was a number of different ways that I thought that I could possibly handle the situation with Mike being an unrestricted free agent. I thought that was ultimately the best way to be fair to Mike, and at the same time, if Mike was back, knowing that Mike had gone through a process and he was back here because we were the best fit for him, and if we weren't the best fit for him, I got to find a new coach, and we got to continue doing what Mike and I were doing up until 3-4 days ago.
Is $50 million ever an option for the Wings, and what kind of a burden will that put on other teams hiring coaches?
Well, the answer to it would be no, and I would come back to you because it's more term. At the end of the day, I told Mike, and Mike understood. I couldn't justify going past 5 years. Mike had been here for 10 years, and I can tell you about but we've only won one playoff round in 4 years. We've got higher, we had bigger goals than to make the playoffs. So, to wake up 2-3 years from now, and if we're not able to kind of take this program to the next level, then everybody starts looking at options. So again, because I've been here for 18 years, because Mike has been here for 10 years, there was a limit on term, and when you've got a limit on term and the people that you're negotiating against don't have a limit on term, it starts to become a factor.
Fair to say that this isn't the end of the world, losing a coach like that? You, as far as comfort goes, you look like a guy who maybe seems a little, not to put words in your mouth, a little relieved today, a little weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. Obviously, I'm glad. I think Mike would probably say. I think he's having a press conference tomorrow. I'm sure Mike's going to say he's glad the process is over and now I can get on to some other things. Yeah, I'm glad that I'm glad to know of a decision. I can now get on with what's next. Part of what's next, obviously, is to talk to some coaches, and we got the NHL Combine. There's NHL Combines coming up. We got our pro scouts coming in for meetings to prepare for free agency, and I've had since I got back, some managers called, and they're starting to have conversations leading into the NHL draft. So, now I know where we're sit on the coaching front. Now I know that I've got to go through a process and find the next coach of the Detroit Red Wings, and hopefully the next coach we find that we can work together and have as much fun and as much success, and maybe more success than Babs and I had.
Ken, if you lose, acknowledge one of the best coaches in the league, maybe the best coach in the league, and why is it not necessarily a blow to the franchise going forward? Like any normal team that would lose the best coach in the league, you'd think they'd be in a little bit of trouble. Why do you seem more prepared?
Well, first off, Wojo, at the end of the day, I gave Mike an opportunity to go through a process, and he chose to be somewhere else. So my attitude always has been, I want to try to find, the 23 players, and you want to find the people that want to be in Detroit. So, Mike made a decision that he wants to be in Toronto. I believe we're going to have a good head coach. I think Mike is, I've always said Mike is if he's not the best head coach, he's one of the best head coaches. Sometimes Wojo, and this is where I sort of get to. He's been here for 10 years. I don't know Mike and I didn't know what 2 or 3 years was going to bring. Like the last 3 years we made the playoffs on, I think, in a 48-game schedule, game 48, game 81, and game 82. So, we've been a team that's been, sort of right on what I call the bubble. We found a way to play our way in. Sometimes change is good. If I can make the right decision. And sometimes change is good. So, certainly Mike Babcock is making this decision today, believing that change is good for his career. I'm sure he'll say that tomorrow. He's probably looking. It's a different challenge. It's a different opportunity. We're the same. We had 10 great years, and after a process, Mike decided to go somewhere else. So we're not going to fold the franchise. We're going to go to work, and we're going to try to beat Mike. Mike's in Toronto. Mike's down the road. Mike wants to go into Toronto and help them make the playoffs. Well, we want to be in that race, and we want to finish ahead of them. So certainly going to make for an interesting kind of side story as we head into the 15-16 season.
I imagine it helped that you have obviously prepared for this.
It's certainly, if we hire Jeff Blashill, certainly that'll probably be one of the things that I'll talk about is the succession plan. I just want to, because Grand Rapids is in the playoffs, because I haven't, it's Mike Babcock, up until 11 o'clock this morning, there was always the possibility that I picked up the phone or Mike came and said, I'm deciding I'm going to stay. So, I haven't gone about any process of talking to any people about the job. It was Mike's job. So, when Mike called me at 11:15, certainly I expected, a number of people here, and I reached out to Blash to say, Blash, the next little while, you're the first guy that I want to talk to. You've been in the organization. You've been the head coach at Grand Rapids. You've been Mike's assistant coach. So that's the first step. Once I have that meeting, I'll know what the next step is.
You mentioned a succession plan. We know that works with players, how you hold guys down, bring them up this way. Does that really work well with coaches as well? Can it?
I don't have that answer for you because first of all, I got to talk to Blash. And then, whenever, if I decide after talking to Blash, I'd like to talk to another person or two, in the next day or two, I'll probably put together, again, we're not going through it. I'm not going to interview 8 and 10 people. I might interview one, I might interview 2 or 3. I'm going to decide that in the next few days. That answer is going to have to play itself out first off by what decision I make as the next head coach, and then watching the watch the story play out. You come to the games, you watch where we sit in the standings, and you watch how everything goes. So I don't think for me to say, oh yeah, pro sports is too hard. I don't know, but certainly I believe when I stand up here in the next couple of weeks, and we have a press conference to introduce the next head coach of the Detroit Red Wings, I believe we're going to have a very good coach.
You've been able to get younger. You've been able to stay competitive. Does that make this whole thing easier, this change?
Yeah, I think so. I think what's made it easy for me is it was Mike's decision. And again, I think, I'm going to go back to 2 weeks when Mike and I sat in the car and Mike requested or asked, I don't know, however, he wanted the opportunity to get the word out that he wanted to talk to teams that had interested to him, and I went over to Mr. and Miss Illich's house, and we sat down, we walked through it, everything, and I said there's a number of different ways we could handle this. I thought this was the best way. I thought this was the best way for the Detroit Red Wings, and I thought this was the best way for Mike Babcock. Excuse me. At the same time, I'm going to come back to, again, 10 years, the people that have helped us win Stanley Cups and the people that played here a long time, I want to make sure that they can sit in the press box, they can get in the rink, they can come in the locker room. They built this thing, whatever you think of the Detroit Red Wings, those players, Scotty Bowman, Dave Lewis was a coach, he was an assistant coach here for 18 years, now Mike Babcock, they've helped build us into what we are, and certainly so for my chance to thank Mike was to grant him his request. And as we sit here today, my comfort level is that I'd like to think that I treated Mike with respect. I gave him an opportunity to pursue what he wanted to pursue. He made a decision today, and now we got to go about the process of finding the next head coach of the Detroit Red Wings. I'd like to think that Mike feels he did. He thanked me for the opportunity to go through this process and make a decision.
And what was Mike Ilitch's reaction? What was Mike Ilitch's reaction when you told him?
Well, I think Mike Ilitch, his reaction was the same as probably mine, and I would speak for Jimmy D. Like, it's been a process. So over the course of the last 3, 4, 5 days, I think he's going to, you sort of come to the realization that there's a real chance he's going to leave. And when the call comes, I called Mr. Ilitch and said he's going to Toronto. I mean, what can we say? I mean, we gave Mike the green light to explore the market. And when you give somebody the green light to explore the market, I'm going to come back to again when they're in the prime of their career. This is a real possibility. So I think Mike Ilitch's reaction is the same as mine. Let's go find the next head coach.
Well, a
What are the
coaching
attributes
change.
in Jeff Blashill?
Pardon me?
In your mind, what are the attributes that make Jeff Blashill a serious candidate?
I would say to you, first off, he seems to have something. He wins, wherever he goes. I look at what he did in Western Michigan and getting them into the NCAA tournament. And I think he had a tremendous positive attitude or positive influence in really building that program. I think prior to that, I think he won in championship in, I believe, Indianapolis. He took over. We've got a thing called the Prospect Tournament in Traverse City. It's now 8 NHL teams. We'd never won that tournament. He coached the teams. First year we hired him as a Grand Rapids coach. They won that tournament. They won the Calder Cup. Last year, with all the injuries we had in Detroit and all the players up here, they had the same thing down there. They ended up getting, I think, 99 points. He was named the coach of the year in the American Hockey League. Got 100 points this year. They're now in the third round of the playoffs. They were down 2-0 to Toronto in the first round of the playoffs. So, number one, he wins. Now, why does he win? I think a good coach, and I when I look at Mike Babcock and I see lots of similarities in Jeff Blashill, but again, I want to talk to him, making players accountable, having a tremendous. Jeff has coached at different levels, just like Mike Babcock went from Moose Jaw and University of Lethbridge and Spokane to the American League to the National League to a different team. Jeff Blashill's been the same. Different levels, had success. Spent time here under Mike Babcock. My respect for Mike. Spending a year kind of learning under Mike and then going down to Grand Rapids. So I think those are enough. You make people accountable, work ethic. He's got a plan. He's coached before. He's got experience. He wins.
You mentioned the term is a sticking point. Would more money per year in those 5 years have made a difference, or was that term just really a deal breaker?
Well, I mean, if all you got to do is if you divide by what we've got at 5, and you start to try to get to the number that's out there, superstar players don't make that amount of money. So I don't even know if there's 3 or 4 players in the entire league that make that kind of money. So it gets, term for me. And Mike understood. I think Mike will talk about it tomorrow. Mike and I are friends. Mike and I are business associates. We worked hand in hand. I think Mike understood. He understood that 10 years coaching the same team, it's a lifetime. There's 4, 5, 6 players in this locker room. He's coached their entire career of pro hockey. So he understands that over the next year or two, who knows where things are going to go. So he understood why I held on term. And if I held on term, I couldn't. There was nowhere to even get remotely close to what other options he had.
Coaching.
Was there like a concern?
Last question.
When you say that, was there a concern that maybe the message wasn't getting across or would not get across the next couple of years?
No chance. I mean, up to this point in time, I can't tell you about the future, Ted. But I would say to you today, in the 10 seasons that Mike has been here, I can't say at the end of the year that I said our team underachieved. That's how I judge a coach. You look at your players, you look at at the injuries, you look at your competition, and you say, did we underachieve? I can say we've had some disappointments. I read some of the disappointments, the playoff losses, but I can't say over 82 games that we ever underachieved. I think that, and at the same time, I think there's a lot of players that sit in these stalls in this locker room that are better players today. Because Mike made them accountable, because Mike had a plan, because Mike pushed them, because Mike was on top of them every day. So, that's what a coach. That's how I judge a coach. Does he make players better? Does he get the most out of the group? Do you get better as the year wears on? Did we have disappointments? Yeah, we had disappointments. We had disappointing losses in some series. And certainly I respect that these other teams are out there trying to win too. But at the end of the day, when the year is over, we had the second most manned games due to injury 2 years ago. We found a way to crawl into the playoffs with our young players. And so now, Ted, what does next year bring and the year after bring and the year after bring? You start to get to year 11, to year 12, to year 13. Certainly, when you offer a 5-year term, I certainly felt that Mike had, 3, 4, 5 years that he could continue to get the most out of our group. But to start to think that you were going to go beyond that, again, 10 years is an eternity in professional sports. I was offering half that term already, so ultimately, I guess I made a decision to stick tight to the 5 years. Mike totally understood, and now there's an opportunity for us here going forward.
Will this help your future trade prospects?
What's that?
Will this help your future trade prospects?
I don't think
change?
it's gonna, I don't, no, I don't think either. I think it's a hard league to make trades in, and we're gonna have a good coach. You know, I think there's lots of positives, the youth on our team. We're going into a brand-new building here in the next couple of years. We've got to watch Dylan Larkin play. We got some, I want to go to Grand Rapids in the next round, so I think that we've got some important building blocks, and whether Mike's the coach or whoever's the next coach, I don't think that has any bearing on trades or free agency.
Has a decision been made on the third
round pick?
What?
Has a decision been made on the third round pick?
We do get compensation. The Leafs over as a third-round pick in any one of the next, I believe it's the 3 drafts, and it's their choice.
They haven't made that decision yet.
No, I'm sure they'll wait to see how the year wears on, and I'm sure the higher they can get it, the better they want it. So.
Are you going to wait to complete the process till the Griffins are done, or are you going to?
What I would do, and this will be the last thing, what I'm going to do is, at some point in time, after tonight, I'm not sure if Grand Rapids is a home team or a road team. And if they play Utica, they open in Utica on Sunday, Monday. If they're the home team, they open Saturday, Sunday against Oak City. I want to see the schedule. And then when I can find a day when they're in Grand Rapids, a non-game day, I want to go down, spend time with Blash, have a good conversation. He's the first person I want to talk to. Certainly, if you go back a year ago, Blash had a year to go on his contract, and I had 5 teams call and ask for permission to interview Jeff Blashill. I went to Blash and I said, I'll give you 2 choices. Your call, give you a choice to go in and talk to any of the teams that you want to, and your contract stays the same, or I'm going to give you a significant raise. We doubled his salary, and for 1 year you agree you don't go in and interview. And Blash said to me, he said, Ken, I like it here. I want to continue to develop as a coach. So basically, he's in year 1 of a 3-year deal. I owe it to Blash to talk to him first, and then based upon that conversation, then I'll decide whether there's more conversations or more interviews, or I'll make a decision. But again, I like to be loyal to people. Blash was loyal to us. Blash chose to stay. Blash could have interviewed with a lot of teams. Blash has had a real positive impact on the younger people in our organization. He's had a real positive impact in Grand Rapids. Part of our success here in Detroit in making the playoffs, Blash has had his fingerprints on it, so I owe it to Jeff Blashill that he's the first person I talked to.
Okay, just the status of the assistant coaches,
Tony Granato has his option. He had 2 years to go on a deal with Pittsburgh, so when he came, I said, I'll give you a 1-year deal, and it's your option. So if there was change, he could. Brew and Jim Hiller both agreed to come on 1-year deals because Babs had a 1-year deal. So, my take would be, again, I'll see. I want people that want to be in Detroit, and their contracts are up. So certainly, I was a big boy. I understood when we signed those people to 1-year deals, what could happen in the summer of 2015. So that'll play out here over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ken.
Appreciate it.